think that one was working too well.
You're listening to Consulting to Win with your host, Ralph White.
And this is Consulting to Win Radio, and on New Day Talk Radio today, and I'm here with Leanne Farmer.
Hi, Ralph.
Good morning. How are you, Leanne?
Oh, I'm doing mighty fine, as
All
you
right.
would say.
All right, thank you. All right. And also we have online with us today a good friend of mine and someone I've worked with for a number of years, Rennie Gabriel.
Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning, Rennie. Nice to hear your voice again. We've been working together on many different assignments, and it's been a pleasure to always what have we known each other for, about 18 years?
Oh, I was going to say 20, but maybe it's only 18. Time goes fast.
Yeah, and since we're both only 25, we must have started very young together.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Rennie's going to be with us today, and I'll ask him actually to introduce himself, if he would, and tell a little bit about yourself, if you would, Rennie.
Sure. I am the president of a company called The Financial Coach Incorporated. I used to practice as a certified financial planner. I still do teach a class at UCLA based on my award-winning, #1 selling book called Wealth on Any Income. That class is coming up again August 1st, and people can contact me or UCLA to get information on that. It's a one-day Saturday course. And I retired from a book publishing company. We had about 80 titles on finance and real estate for the consumer. So I'm pretty well versed in that area, and I have a portfolio of apartment buildings I own and manage.
Yeah, Rennie was retired to manage it, from consulting. We've done a lot of consulting together, but he really enjoys working in his apartment buildings, and I did a lot of manual work while I was in the sheet metal business, and I retired from that into consulting, and Rennie retired from consulting and went into manual labor. So
yeah,
we kind of switched places in life. So like I said, we've known each other for a number of years. So, but it's been an interesting week, Leanne. I wanted to share a breakthrough that one of our clients had this week.
Great.
I have a client that's been working in sales, a new client that started working with us, and he owns a business that does marketing for other businesses, and one of his challenges was creating sales, and he has a sales manager that he wanted to inspire to generate more new business. And so I told him, I says, you need to set up weekly sales calls and go out with the sales manager.
Right.
And he said, me go out with the sales manager? And I said, yes. I said, so you need to set up like 6 appointments a week and go with the sales manager to your customers and meet them and, have sales calls.
Did they get it done?
Well, there was a lot of resistance, the first week. I mean, there was like, well, how, we can't do 6 calls a week, and, a lot of pushback on the conversation. And once they got over that it couldn't be done, they actually set it up, and the first week they went out together, they come back with $274,000 worth of sales.
Wow.
Which created a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement.
Uh-huh.
And then I asked him, I said, well, on our coaching call this past week, I said, great, that's wonderful. And do you have 6 calls set up for this week? And they said yes. And they had 3 calls set up for the next week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's really happy to see when a client gets past their belief that something can't get done.
Right.
It's
Right.
really nice when they, it's our beliefs that often stop us.
And that's where a coach can really help.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
because They kind of give you that outside ear, that impartial third party that always somehow seems to have the influence you need to get you off the dime.
Exactly. It's like, when people like, oh, I can't do that, and I say, I don't care about that, or that, or you're familiar with that,
Oh, yeah. It takes a while to get through the resistance. We
Right.
all have it. It's all, you can't make me, or I don't want to, or that's too much work. And then they find out, it's just mind chatter that's in their way. And then when they actually decide they're willing, that's all you got to get
Right.
to, is the willingness to
Right.
try it. it works and it's not difficult.
Right, and that's what we're trying to provide here for our listeners is the opportunity to experience that, experience how a coach can kind of help you get over those roadblocks.
Right. I was working with a client last night. He was, really actually depressed. He was like things weren't going his way, and when he really got down to it, he was upset the way the market has gone, and he was actually upset that he had to go back to working for sales. Sales had really, up until this year, had gone his way. I mean, sales were coming in, business was coming his way, and he could sort of pick and choose what he did. And now he has to actually go out and work for sales. And when we dug down and got, below the surface, it was really like pissed off at the fact that he was going to have to go out and work at it. Excuse my language, but once in a while you have to use really direct language as a coach, but you had to get past the what's stopping people. Mm-hmm. But it's like he really got down to that's what it was. It was he was really upset that he was going to have to actually go out and make calls and work at it.
Right.
And I said, so are you going to let that go? Are you going to get over that? And he said, well, I really should do that. And I said,
that's a start.
Yeah, well, and I kept asking. I was like, when are you going to do that? Well, soon, pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I kept asking the question, when? And he said, well, I should do that. And I kept asking the question, and I kept pressing on it, and finally he says, okay, I'm over it. I said, great. So now we can move forward.
Right.
It's like once you can let go of what you're resisting, you then have access to changing the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that also kind of gets back to last week we were talking about managing time,
Mm-hmm.
and some people are very resistant to putting things in their calendar. We talked a lot about that last week, how everything has to happen in time. And if you're not willing to put those sales calls into your calendar, just like you would any other appointment, chances are they're not going to happen.
Right, exactly.
Ralph, when you were talking, it reminded me of the game you and I used to play, where one of us would really be upset about something, and then one or the other would look at our watch and say, how long do you want to be upset about this?
Oh, yeah.
And it would be, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, until you decided you were going to get over it, and or I would, and, then the time would come and we'd be over it.
Right.
But it was just a game. It was choosing to not have it influence us any longer.
Right, exactly. In other words, really limit, you're going to get over it.
Yeah.
It's predictable. You're going to, if you're upset, you're going to get over it.
And you're upset, and, okay, that's fine. You can have the room to be upset.
Right. It's just limiting how long you're going to live in that.
Exactly.
Is it going to be, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks? It's really reducing that amount of time, which gives you freedom to move on in your business.
Exactly.
So do you think a coach helps people kind of reduce that amount of time or compartmentalize that kind of upset time? How does a coach help when someone's in that space?
Well, I was talking to another client this week, and as he was expressing, he's actually, it's interesting as a coach. I mean, you end up with all kinds of conversations, because being a business coach, I know that we're not a therapist, we're not an attorney, we're not an accountant, and it actually says in our coaching agreement, if you need any of those, you should seek professional advice. But, really, your business is a reflection of you. Your business, covers a lot of different areas of your life. And I was actually talking with a client this week about his teenage daughter. So he was working with how he could coach his teenage daughter in a challenge that she was having. And all I was doing was just listening to him as to what he was going through and what he was working on and what he was doing. And I really didn't give him any coaching on it. He said the value I provided was just that he could express what he was working on with somebody that was just listening to him, that that was valuable for him. So that He says, just somebody he could talk to, that didn't have an opinion about it, that could just listen. He says, just in the expressing it, he come up with his own ideas, in how to handle it and the actions that he could take.
You know, it's funny, Ralph, although we are not therapists, we're not operating in a therapy model, business coaching is completely different. In the therapy model, that is how things work. The therapist brings up a question, or the client starts to explain a situation, and actually in hearing themselves, they come up with their answers. It's having another human being present, as like you said, to actually listen to the client.
Very true. Very true.
And I also think it's interesting how what we see in our work is that the business life and the personal life, they have to intersect. I think a lot of people try to keep those things separate. But the reality is that a lot of the challenges you face in your business are quite similar to the challenges that you're facing in your personal life.
Right.
And the coaching that we want to provide, what we're trying to do at Possibilities Unlimited, which is our company, is not be afraid to address both sides of that equation.
Right.
And we want people to be fulfilled and healthy in their business and personal life. And in fact, we call it business life.
Right.
With a slash, because you can the advice that we give and the listening that we give carries over into both sides.
Right. That's the purpose of our whole life matrix, the model that we put together, to where we're looking at the different aspects of your life. So we actually look at the 4 different areas of your life. We're looking at financial viability, we're looking at relationships, we're looking at health and well-being, and we're looking at personal awareness. And we look at those 4 different elements as essential areas that have to be included in your life. So it's like winning the game of life is not having just your business be successful.
Exactly.
If you drop out a relationship, you're not winning the game. If you drop out your health and well-being, you're not winning the game. If you're not seeing Dr. Jim and taking care of all of the elements that are necessary in health and well-being, you're not going to have a happy life. You can have a successful business, your health fails, that doesn't really, you haven't won the game of life. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you don't have personal awareness, if you're driving, you can be healthy, you can have a successful business, but you don't have a relationship with your, personal spirit, with yourself. If you're not taking, if you don't have that connection with the community, with the environment, you don't have a whole life. If you don't have a connection with your family, if you don't have a connection with, with your friends, it's really about having everything included in your life. That's winning the game of life.
Right, and I think people need to know that it's okay to win.
Yes.
I think a lot of people have a resistance to that. There's sometimes there's some negative connotations to winning, believe it or not. People think it's being greedy or too self-serving, but we think it's okay to win at
Definitely.
Consulting to Win.
That's exactly.
It's so funny you said that, Leanne, because there's the quote when was it Desmond Tutu was being inaugurated. No, it wasn't Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela, and he talked about that. It's okay to shine a spotlight on yourself. It gives other people permission to shine as well. And there are the people who say, "Oh no, it's not okay to win."
Yeah, you really, when you win, you actually validate the possibility. When you have a successful business, when you have a successful life, you validate that possibility. I see people in business, their business is successful and they want to hide it. I don't want my employees to know that I'm doing well, or I don't want my customers to know that I'm doing well. It's actually important for people. I don't believe in flaunting it. I don't believe in saying, I'm better than you because I'm doing well. But I believe that it's important that you validate that it is in fact possible to succeed in business, that it is possible to have a successful life, because it validates, the American dream is possible. I mean, if you didn't see that possibility, it would die off.
Right. Right.
it's nice to meet people that say, I went from, I didn't have anything. I went into business. I'm successful. I have a happy family. I have a happy home life. I don't spend 24 hours a day in my business. I spend time with my family. I have vacations. I have a group of people working for me that are successful and happy. That is a sign that it can in fact be done. It gives people assurance that if I put my organization together, if I design it well, I too can have that.
Right, because you never know who you're going to touch.
Right.
With that way of being. And it's much better to have that winning attitude and, like you say, show people that there are possibilities.
Right.
If you're the kind of manager that is always in a funk or not believing in your product or lost in everything that's going wrong, you can't really expect to inspire your staff or your family to strive to win.
Right. If you have any questions about what we're talking about today, please dial in on 310-715-6709. That's 310-715-6709. We welcome questions. We're delighted that you call in and ask us questions. We always invite you to, share your ideas with us. Or, for future times, you can send any questions that you might have or want us to consider on any calls or any of our shows to Leanne, Leeann, at consulting, 2win.com. That's Leanne at consulting, 2win.com.
Yeah, I'd love to get your emails. We'd love to contact you back, and we'd love to use your ideas for future shows here on New Day Talk Radio.
Right. And if there's some, I'm always interested in hearing if there's some idea, because, really, I'm after, if there's some coaching or some idea that you hear on the show, or some, I'm always looking for you to take an idea and put it into action. Inspiration. If you hear something on the show and you're inspired by it, and you don't put it into action, inspiration without action is entertainment. This isn't. I'm here to coach you, and my coaching is put it into action. So if you hear something that's valuable, write it down, put it into action, and then send us an email about the results that you're producing out of it.
Right. And right now, in fact, if you do that, we have a contest going on, right, Ralph?
Yes, definitely.
If you do what Ralph just said, last week, if you missed our show, we talked a lot about time management. And we have a contest in July that if you will email me, that's Leanne at consultingtowin.com, 3 ideas for you to put into place in your business as regards time management, something you can do in your business that you think is going to make a difference in how you manage time. Email us those 3 ideas, and we will put you into a drawing for a free 2-session business health checkup. You'll have the opportunity to work with one of our coaches on staff, and we'll give you a free 2-session health checkup. Just email your ideas to Leanne at consultingtowin.com, and we'll announce the winner in early August.
Yeah, and the value of that is, just like going to a doctor and getting a physical, only it's for your business. So it will be, give you a sense of areas that you can focus on. We're like, chiropractors for business. We'll poke on different areas until we'll find something that's where there's a little pain, and then you'll know, okay, you need to work in that area. That's something that you need to address. So
what area are we going to poke on today, Ralph?
Well, good idea. Let's work on production and delivery. So that, I like to look at businesses. The 2 major sections of business are sales and then production and delivery. And when I'm looking at production and delivery, that's whether you're a service business or a manufacturing business, you look at how you deliver the service or how you make your product that falls into production and delivery.
Okay. Well, are there some key components to that part of the business, production and delivery?
Yes, I'd like to look at the 4 segments or the 4 key elements of production and delivery. Are the measurements of performance, the resources, the procedures, and the team.
Okay.
Those are the 4 key areas of production and delivery.
Well, what are measurements of performance?
Well, measure.
I can answer that.
Oh,
because
okay.
please,
as you were
Rennie.
going through this, Ralph, I was trying to see how does this apply to the apartment buildings that I own.
Okay.
And one of the measurements of performance that I use is the occupancy level.
Excellent.
Am I at 90% occupied, 95%? And the measurement that I strive for on a continual basis is 100% occupancy, and much of the time that is where we operate. Apartments are rented before tenants move out because they give me permission to show it before they leave so that prospective tenants can see it. And I, most of the time, have new lease agreements signed before an old tenant vacates the apartment, and so I'm able to maintain 100% occupancy.
And then what does that measurement tell you, Rennie? Does that help you know how much money you're going to make, or
Yes,
what do you
it
do
does.
with that
It
measurement?
obviously relates to money because each vacant apartment is a loss of income directly from my pocket, because once the expenses for the properties are covered, the additional income is profit. So it's a direct impact on profit.
Yeah, Rennie, in that industry, I mean, you're an expert in that industry. I mean, you've got a lot of apartments, and actually, how long ago did you start in that business?
Kind of like, well, I inherited a little 4-unit building in 1985, so that would be what?
Yeah, but disregard that one because you've had that one for a long time. But
Oh, okay.
You
So
weren't.
then when I started actively buying buildings would have been 2001, so we're only
Right.
talking 8 years ago.
Right.
Wow.
So in the last 8 years, I mean, you've acquired a lot of units.
Correct.
Yeah. So you were. It was. I'm going to say. Well, before 2001, it was a hobby.
Yeah,
You know, after 2001, you got serious about it.
that's correct.
Right. But in the industry, what do most people consider the vacancy factor?
Oh, if they're doing anything in the 90%, they're, 5-star category.
Right.
If they 91, 92, they think they're, on top of the world.
Right. So most people are measuring for 91, 92%.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not normal.
Thank you, Ralph.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're measuring for 100%.
That's correct.
So you're not living in the same paradigm. You're not measuring for the same thing that everybody else considers to be acceptable
Or exceptional.
or exceptional.
Yeah.
They're saying exceptional is 90%, and what they're getting is 91, 92%, and they're thrilled.
Oh, yeah.
They think they're doing a great job, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but they're not looking in the same place that you're looking. You're looking at you're looking for 100%. So you're looking at, well, if I'm going to have 100%, I got to rent them before they move out.
That's correct.
I can't have 100% if I let them move out and then they're vacant. I'm not at 100%.
That's correct. I don't want to be showing vacant apartments.
Right.
I show occupied apartments.
Exactly. So you're an excellent example of the measurements of performance. If you establish, most companies, a lot of companies, don't have measurements of performance in place.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and it's worse. It's more than incredible. It's sad. I mean, I'm working with a new client that is a large company, and I'm talking. When I first started with the client, I asked the president of the company. I said, "What are your measurements of performance?" And he says, "I don't understand what you mean." And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Do you have job descriptions?" And he says, "No." And I said, "Okay, then we need to start there." And I said, "So what are the standards that you have for your employees?" And he says, "They don't have any."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Okay, then we have a big problem." I says, "So how do you know when people are getting the job done?" And he says, "Well, when the work comes out." And I said, "So if you don't get the work done, what do you do?" And he says, "Well, then I hire more people."
Oh, my.
And he had something like 60, 70 people. So I said, "So you just keep hiring people until you got enough people to get the job done?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Well, we need to establish standards of what needs to be done so that we can make sure that everybody's delivering to a standard so that we know they're getting the job done.
So let's look at some examples, because I think a lot of businesses, let's say, have 10, 20, 30 employees. And measurements of performance are real key as regards employees. So let's say I had a paper company and I had a bunch of guys putting reams of paper in boxes. What would be an example of how I would measure their performance?
Well, you'd establish how many boxes they should do in an hour, or how many boxes per day, or how many pallets per day is a norm. You need to establish what's the expectation. It's actually to the advantage of the employee to establish what's the expectation. It's not fair to an employee, to not have an expectation, because they don't know what they need to do to win the game.
So do you advocate having a game in place?
Oh, definitely.
How does that work?
Well, you establish what the standard is, and then you create a reward for exceeding this standard. So every employee should have an opportunity to make more money. I mean, if you're looking at why do people go to work? They go to work to make money.
Right.
Okay? And there should be a standard of performance for the amount of money that they're making. And then there should be an opportunity for them to make more money if they exceed that standard of performance.
And all that needs to be kind of written down in concrete
Totally.
terms, right?
Yes.
So everybody understands.
Right. In other words, if you do X, I'm paying you X dollars. If you exceed X, I'll pay you more. So that every employee has an opportunity to make more money.
Now, what about the guys that are not living up to the expectation?
They need to be called in, and they need to be, made aware of. You're not delivering on the standard. We need to look at what's missing. Do you need more training? Do you need what's wrong? Is there something? What is missing, such that you're not able to deliver on what the standard is? Is the job not a fit for you? Do we need to move you to another position?
And what about consequences?
Well, if you can't deliver on your job description, then you need to look at, you don't belong in the job.
Ralph, it's so interesting. I have a tenant who works for Walmart, and he told me that in terms of stocking shelves, when the items are delivered off the truck and they go into the warehouse, and then the employees break down the pallets to put the merchandise on the shelf, they actually have a measurement of performance on how long it should take from the time a pallet arrives until the merchandise is on the shelf. And they end up stocking the shelves generally within 2 to 3 minutes of the time frame that they're required to operate in. So Walmart knows how long it takes from the time a pallet is delivered to the store till the merchandise is sitting on the shelf for the customer to purchase.
That's very reasonable, because I talk to employees and say, what is it that you have to do to satisfy your boss? What does the boss expect from you? And they say, I don't know. And then I talk to the boss and say, what are your measurements of performance for your employee? And they say, well, I just want them to get the job done. And I say, what does that mean? Well, that they just go do what they need to do to get the job done. I said, I don't understand what that means. Explain that to me. Well, to just kind of like go out there and do it. And I'm like, okay. Now let's get that, when I drill down on it, they really don't know what it is they want. And then when I ask them more questions, I can actually get it down to where I can get it defined. It clarifies it. And then when I get the two of them together and get them to define it, then the employee says, oh, that's what they want. Because prior to that, the employee is making up what they think will make the boss happy.
Right.
And most of the time, the boss changes it. So it's this constant changing thing that that never meets. It's sort of like me guessing what's going to make my wife happy. You know, it's a moving target.
That's right.
And
No
and
comment.
I'm a lousy guesser. You know, when you put it down on paper, then it takes the personalities out of it. It takes all the guesswork out of it. You know, if I show up to work and I do, 32 of these units a day, I'm getting my job done. And if I do 50 units a day, and then I'm doing an exceptional work.
Well, it sounds like you're getting into the procedures part of this particular
Right.
piece of our matrix, because they've got to develop the standards in order to know what the standards are that need to be met.
Right.
So how do you pick out what those standards are, and is that where a business coach can help you come up with those ideas?
Right. Well, people have procedures for doing things, but they keep them in their head. And they change them. And that poses a really big problem for companies, because it's like, Joe is doing a particular job, and then Joe gets sick, and then they expect Leanne to go do that job, but Leanne doesn't know what Joe has in his head, and so Leanne makes up how to do it, but doesn't do it the same as Joe does, and then they're like, well, Leanne is not a good employee, which is a lie, because Leanne's a great employee. She does a great job, but because they don't have a procedure for it, it isn't written down.
Right.
When a business starts, it starts with the one person usually and an owner, and everything's in the owner's head, and the owner's running around doing everything and making all of the decisions, and then they expand it and they hire another person and another person. And, you've got 3 or 4 people working together, and everything's in their heads. And as they add more people, and then it reaches a point where you've got to stop and write down those procedures, and people get so busy that they don't take the time to do that. When you do stop and write it down, that's when you provide the opportunity for the business to grow.
Right.
That's where the breakthrough opportunity actually occurs in a business, because then when a new person comes in, you can hand them the manual and say, this is how we do this. Here's the procedures. This is the steps that it takes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to produce this whatever item it is, or this is how we do it. You're the receptionist, here's the procedure, here's how you answer the phone, here's the procedure of how you run the radio station,
Right.
here's the procedure of how you do this medical process.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but time and time again we find that companies aren't doing that.
That's true.
Ralph, I remember years ago when you had the sheet metal manufacturing company, and you were having your processes standardized for, was it ISO 9000?
Correct.
There were large companies that said, if you don't have this certification, which means you've documented your procedures, we will not do business with you.
Correct. And I resisted it, because of the cost, and I didn't want to take the time, and I balked at it. But when they put the gun to my head and said, no purchase orders without without that process in place, I finally made that shift, and it made a believer out of me, because once I had the processes in writing, the quality issues went away, my quality went up, my ability to train went up, things got easier to manage. All of my problems went down, quality went up, profit went up, productivity went up.
Right. Now, we're obviously believers in this, so we want to hear from you and hear if you are having any challenges in trying to figure out measurements of performance and procedures. Give us a call here at New Day Talk Radio. Our number is 310-715-6709. You can talk directly with Ralph White or Rennie Gabriel or me, Leanne Farmer.
Ralph, I just realized another area where that shows up in the managing of apartments. So it's not about just manufacturing, it's not about retail, it's not medical services, it's any kind of business. As an example, when a tenant moves in to one of my properties, we go through a long list of items that we are both agreeing to, from the standpoint of if something's not working, I will fix it, to what happens when they move out and I have to repaint their apartment, or I have to repair something, or I have to have it cleaned. And just today, I was going through that with a tenant who moved out, who was complaining about the cost of painting. And when I redirected her to what we had in writing that she had signed and agreed to, that said, if you're in the apartment for 3 years, you will not pay for any of the repainting. I expect it to last 3 years, and it's depreciating. If you're only in the apartment for 1 year, you will pay 2/3 of the cost to repaint the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So although she was upset, she realized this is something she agreed to up front in writing when she moved in.
And it was reasonable.
It's reasonable, and it's agreed to in advance.
Right.
So that if complaints come up later, I have the documentation in the same way you would with any procedure that says, here is how it's supposed to be done.
Right.
I have that even in renting the apartment. Here is how we will operate.
Right. Yeah, it's putting it on paper takes it out of storing it in your mind. Your mind is an inadequate storage device for data. It just seems like data changes, your interpretation changes over time when you keep it in your mind.
Well, and I think what he was talking about is important to discuss also for service businesses, because it's real easy to say our standard is you've got to put X boxes of paper on the shelf. That's real easy to measure. But if you're in a service business, kind of like Rennie is, you've got to be a little more careful about what those measurements of performance are. They're a little more nebulous.
Right. Well, you can actually set up measurements of performance. I assert that you can do it for anything.
Uh-huh.
People say, well, you can't measure my business. You can't measure customer satisfaction, for instance. Or I'm in a doctor's office and you can't measure something.
Absolutely, you can.
You can. You can measure customer complaints. How many, if we don't get any, if customers don't call and complain about the service, that's an improvement. You can do customer surveys. That's an improvement. Where you can actually judge, how they view, your the response to the customer surveys is a way to view, a measurement.
And Ralph, when you're talking about like a doctor's office, you have all sorts of measurements. How many people are canceling or changing appointments?
Definitely.
How long does someone have to wait in the waiting room before they're seen by the nurse or the doctor or whatever? I'd gotten an email from my dentist a month in advance of my appointment to confirm that I will be showing up.
Right.
And another email the day before my appointment to confirm. I would assert that this dentist does not have a lot of canceled appointments.
Right. Well, you can also measure patient visits. You can measure referrals. You can measure, cancellations. You can measure just about anything. That you start to look at, what is the root cause. You start to look at what is it I want, and then you start to look at, when I say root cause, it's sort of like looking at the root of a tree. What is it that's behind, or you drill down and you look at what's below, what causes what I'm after. If I'm getting patients canceling appointments, or if I'm getting patients, complaining, that's a cause of something. It's an indicator of something. So you start to look at, what is it indicating?
Right.
You gotta analyze it, but you look at what do I want, and then what precedes what I want, or what's an indicator of what I'm after.
Oh.
And I think your
procedure breaks down into the word what precedes what you want.
Exactly.
And I think your coach can really help you break that apart.
Exactly.
Right? I think a lot of people find that it's this big picture that they can't really break apart into those pieces that help them define what we're talking about. So,
yeah.
As a coach, how do you get somebody on the path to do that?
Well, I use, from what they do in manufacturing, they reverse engineer things. It's like oftentimes, in engineering, they'll take a product and reverse engineer it. They'll take it apart and engineer and design the product in reverse. So I'll take what you want, I'll take the end result, and then back it up and say, okay, we want $1 million worth of sales, okay, or we want to close $1 million sale, let's say. So what happened just before that? Well, we're shaking hands with the customer and smiling and being very happy, and then what happened just before that? Well, we're signing the contract. And what happened just before that? Well, we're negotiating the contract. So we just back it back down, and what to today, to where we can see, well, what's standing between us and that $1 million contract. Today is a whole lot of conversations with people that have the potential of spending $1 million with us. So we've got to find those people. So what starts before those conversations is finding those people.
Right.
So what I got to be doing today is identifying those people. That's sort of a reverse engineering of the process. So I can start saying, okay, well, today that's my starting point. So I actually get to the starting point by starting with the end and backing into it. Because oftentimes if you're sitting at the starting point trying to figure out, well, gosh, what do I do next? You can't figure it out. It's like, I don't know what to do next because I never did that.
Real quickly, I want to touch, we spoke about resources. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but I want to get to the other pieces of the matrix. Why are resources are pretty obviously important for production and delivery, but...
Well, those are the building blocks. Those are the the facilities, the equipment, your buildings, your machinery, the inventory, the materials that you use to make your products out of, your labor, and your management. Those are the 4 elements of the resources. Those are the key thing. Those are the things that you're buying. Those are the things that you're managing. Those are the things that that you've got to be careful that you don't spend too much money on. Those are the things that that you've got to inventory. You've got to have a system in place to keep track of them. That you can't that those are the things that could be stolen from you or that you could lose or waste. So you've got to you've got to maintain. You've got to take care of. You've got to train. You've got to make sure that you've got the right people on the bus in the right seats. So there's a lot of care and maintenance of all 4 of those categories that that are essential in order to have an effective delivery system. If you don't have the right people, you're not going to have an effective system.
And then through your work with the clients that you work with, this is something you kind of, on an ongoing basis, you're helping them to monitor. I know I've heard you talk to people and say, well, how many calls this week or how many of this week? You really are working with them and encouraging them to continue to monitor those things, because procedures are great if you have them written down, but if you don't follow through.
Yeah, you've got to have a follow-up system. You've got to constantly be tracking things. You've got to constantly keep things, as we were talking last week, on your radar screen, to where you're constantly staying on top of all of these different particles.
Right.
You can't, you've got to be aware of what's going on in all these different areas of your business.
Right. Your coach can really help you do
Definitely.
that.
Definitely.
You talked about team as kind of the 4th quadrant of production and delivery. Why is the team important?
Well, I look at a business like a sport. Everything that's present in a sport is present in a business. You have rules, you have winning, you have losing, you have a coach, you have out of bounds, you have you have
what does out of bounds look like?
you don't you've crossed the line. You're out of here.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
I like the distinction of a high performance team. That's committed to winning the championship. Extraordinary performance. You have a plan, you have strategy, you have playbook on how we're going to win the game. You have winning. You have a purpose. You have alignment.
Alignment is a word that I hear you use a lot. Can you expound on alignment a little bit? Some people might not know what that's all about.
Well, I often see businesses like a stagecoach with 8 horses, and all 8 horses are going in 8 different directions.
Uh-huh.
The purchasing department has its agenda, the sales department has its agenda, the accounting department has its agenda, the production department has its agenda, and they're not all the same agenda. It's actually seems like they're all different companies. Like they don't even relate to one another. They don't even talk to one another practically. So it's like you got to get everybody focused on we're all the same company, going in the same direction, having the same purpose. We're all aligned on the same goal. We're all here to get the same job done. Because I've seen companies where it's like, the sales department will sell something that the purchasing department won't buy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we won't buy that because it's not. They just they argue about it, or the production department won't deliver it in the time frame that the sales department promises.
Or all the employees aren't even trained together. As an example, I went to pick up a plumbing fixture for my wife yesterday at a plumbing supply store. She'd paid for it in advance, so she got a phone call that it had arrived and we should come pick it up. I went to the will call department and the person couldn't find it. And he said, well, what company name is it under? And I said, I have no idea. My wife's name is this. I went to another employee in another part of the business, and he looked it up under my wife's name and said, well, if someone pays for something in full, it would be under her name. The business name is something or another tile. Give that to the person over there, and he'll be able to find the product. Well, why is it one employee knew how to look it up and another employee didn't?
Right.
I've been given a phone call that it was there, and that shows the lack of training given to the employees.
Right. Yeah, all in the same building, working for the same company.
Boy, we see that
That's
kind
right,
of thing
but
every
not
day.
in alignment.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Frustrating.
Right. So it's getting everybody in agreement. If a company's in alignment, if you walk through a company and you ask them what are the 3 most important things in this company, if they come up with the same 3 things, then they're in alignment. Standard Oil, Rockefeller built Standard Oil by having, 3, he actually had 5 top priorities that everyone in the company knew about. That's how he built Standard Oil. That was one of his habits that he built that company on. That everybody knew what the top 5 priorities of the company were, and then what the top priority of those 5 were. And he kept everybody aligned on that. And that's how he built that company. So it's like but if you can keep a whole company focused on the top 3 things of what we're here for, that puts the whole energy of the company lined up on the same thing. You got them all going in the same direction. We're here for customer service. We're here to make a profit. We're here to to increase the gross profit margin of the company.
Right. And at Consulting to Win, we want to help you with all of these aspects of your business. We'd love to have you enter our contest. Just email me at Leann, that's LEEANN, at consulting2win.com. Tell me 3 things how you're going to implement on time management in your company. 3 changes you can make to make things work more smoothly. We'll pick one lucky winner to have a 2-session healthy business checkup, and we'll announce that in August. We're down to the last couple minutes. Ralph, anything else that you want to share today?
Well, I really welcome everyone to send us an email with to Leann with any questions that you might want us to discuss on the air. We're going to continue to work with this whole life matrix. And
check out our website at
right.
www.consultingtowin.com. That's consulting, the number 2, win.com.
And also our blog. Tell them about that one.
Oh, we have a great blog. It gets posted 3 times a week at consultingtowin.blogspot.com.
Right.
And we'd love to have you take a look at that. And we're also on Twitter.
Yes.
And Ralph, I'd like to plug again my UCLA class. It's a one-day Saturday on August 1st. The title of the course is From Debt to Wealth on Any Income, and it's based on my number one selling book. So they can contact either UCLA or me for more information, and my email is rennie@renniegabriel.com.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week.
Welcome. You're listening to New Day Talk Radio, where every day is a new day.
You're listening to Consulting to Win with your host, Ralph White.